Okay, I muted everyone. 1 second.
Hey everyone, since we have so many of you, before we get started, one very important thing to be reminded of is that the MLH Code of Conduct applies at all times during DefHacks events. This is not an exception to that. If you've not already read it, please go to mlh.io/code-of-conduct. TLDR is be respectful, harassment and abuse will not be tolerated. And so basically, play nice. We know you're all friendly, but please prove it to us. Thanks, friends.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, welcome everyone to the Ask Me Anything with Amjad Masad. Amjad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so just a quick bio about Amjad. Amjad is the founder and CEO of Repl.it, the world's leading online coding platform. Amjad's been working on programming and creative tools for his entire career, starting as a founding engineer at Code Academy, where he helped build the world's first interactive code learning platform, and continuing at Facebook, where he was the founding engineer on React Native, the most prominent cross-platform mobile development framework, and eventually starting at Repl.it, where he's building an environment that blurs the distinction between learning and building. We're so grateful that you can do this AMA with us. So yeah, just thank you again. We're going to start by just one question that was already pre-submitted. And then after that, we will have you guys just raise your hand with the Zoom feature. You can do that with just Alt-Y, or you can click on participants and then click the raise hand button. Okay, so yeah, let's just get started. So the question that we had from our previous form was, how did Repl.it emerge out of the thousands of online IDEs to become one of the most used tools for online coding?
Yeah. Well, first of all, can you hear me okay? My voice coming good?
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right. Cool. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I mean, it's hard to answer these questions about, why are we more successful. I still think though that it is kind of early, and there's a lot to be done with regards to making programming easier, more accessible. We think of being an online IDE as merely a detail. I mean, it makes it a lot easier for people to use the platform, but we don't necessarily identify it just as an online IDE. We are actually building a mobile app right now, and so our mission is to make programming more accessible, make it easy for anyone in the world to start coding, removing the hurdles from programming and making programming more fun and collaborative and interactive. And maybe these values kind of come through, and hopefully people find what we're building useful and interesting for them. And maybe that's why. Maybe another answer is we kind of started early. So I had the idea for like an online IDE back in 2010, and we built the open source. At the time, it was an open source project called JS REPL, which was the first in browser REPL interactive programming environment, and that became the basis for Code Academy, where I went to work. So I kind of been in the game for a long time now, and kind of dedicated my career to that. And so maybe that's why maybe we have the expertise and the knowledge and the sort of deep interest in this subject, in this area.
Yeah, thank you. So you guys, you can just use the raise hand feature now, and I will start calling on you guys. When I call on you, just you can turn on your video and your mic, and then just ask the question. Okay, so Osama, you can go now. I think I just unmuted you. Can you talk?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes, we can see you.
Nice having you here. So my question to you is, how did you go from having an idea to building that idea? and then to putting the idea out to the world so people can, access it and use your idea instead of others, and in a way that you're able to make money off of it or just, have a notice from it. So like, how did you go from an idea to making it and to publishing it to the world such that you're able to, get recognized for it?
Yeah, I think that that's possible for anyone to do. Well, anyone with the resources, and hopefully everyone in the world will have the resources. But some people don't. But anyone with the resources, um, the only thing that's stopping you is yourself. And that's kind of a lesson I've learned as a founder, as someone who's creative and trying to build things, starting things. You're almost always your biggest enemy in a way, where the thing that stops you from publishing something, the thing that stops you from working on something, either is you think that you're not good enough, you think that you're not going to be able to build it or do it, you think that you're um, not capable enough. Maybe you're ashamed or embarrassed of what you're building. And so you're coming up with a lot of excuses for not building the thing that you had the idea for. So a lot of people have ideas. It's become cliches that, an idea is worth nothing. In a way, ideas, no, definitely are worth something. But I think that the reason people say that is because, the people, if you look at it as a funnel, the people that go from having the idea, which is like everyone has ideas, to the people who actually take the first step into, like, say, writing the first line of code, you have a lot of people that drop off for many reasons. And then as you go down, maybe someone builds something. And I know a lot of people that build things that they don't release because they're embarrassed or don't think that it's good enough. And then you go down the funnel, the people who actually release things are kind of like very few. And so that the first thing you got to notice is that the people who are out there in the world building things and launching things are not much better than you, are not different than you. They're the same as you. They breathe the same air as you. And so what makes them different is that they hit that launch button and wrote the first line of code. And so again, just, don't stand in your own way, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. So we've got a question. So Osama, would you be able to mute yourself now?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then we've got a question from Adam. I've just unmuted you.
Oh, hello. So what would you say was the biggest technical challenge that you had in developing Repl?
I think in the I think it's still the same challenge. I think just the idea of giving people free compute on the internet is kind of a radical idea, where you're just allowing people to execute code on your machines that you're paying for. And the challenges that come with that is security, abuse, cost, and scalability, right? So scalability, you have a lot of people trying to use your product and it needs to scale for it to get to them. Security and abuse, I'll just merge them into one, where a lot of people are trying to break the sandbox in order to abuse the system. A lot of people are trying to host malicious code on your platform. And then maybe something like the cost is, how do you build a service that allows you to scale to everyone as cheaply as possible, so that people can use a product for free for the most part. And that's a very infrastructure heavy challenge. And I'm someone who's kind of interested in these topics, and it just became something that you kind of obsess about and you kind of think about all the time, and it gets really interesting to work on. And so it's, engineers love hard challenges, so I love this challenge. Other technical challenges, like building the front end, is also pretty challenging at Repl.it. You have to build like an IDE that works in the browser. It needs to be small and fast enough so that it loads really quickly. It needs to be dynamic enough so that, depending on the environment you're coding in, it needs to change. So a lot of challenges, but I would definitely say the infrastructure challenges is the biggest one.
Thank you.
Great. So just one more question that we've gotten from our form. So what are the main daily responsibilities of a CEO of a tech company?
Yeah, I mean, that changes when you're a startup. It kind of changes every year or two. In the first year or two, it was mostly coding. Like I was mostly an engineer, maybe add to that some marketing and some sales, but then it changed into more like um, sort of team leadership and tech leadership. And I'm trying to you go from an individual contributor, someone who's writing the code yourself, to someone who's leading a team that is writing the code. So you need to describe the vision, and you need to direct people, and you need to motivate people. And then now I'm acting more like a manager, where day to day I'm doing one-on-ones with people, understanding their concerns, kind of decimating information, in the company, and making sure everyone understands where we are today, what our vision is, what our mission is, um, and making sure people are performing to the best of their abilities, giving them the feedback that they need to perform well, um, making sure we're allocating the resources in the right way, that we're focused on the right thing, that we're not doing kind of dumb things in a lot of ways. Um, and that's it's mostly a lot of meetings and making sure that people are on the right track and the projects are on the right track. And then I also spend a good chunk of my time thinking about the future products that we can build. I do a lot of prototyping. I use our product a lot as well. And just like, I'm not committing code day to day that on our projects today, but at the same time, I'm still coding because I want to imagine what's next. What are we building next?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I split my time between the day-to-day management and then the future-facing thinking and prototyping.
Thank you. So we've got a question from Julian. I've unmuted you, and you don't have to put your video if you don't want to, but yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, what is something that you think people should do to what people should avoid while doing a startup, and what tips you wish you knew before you started?
That's a great question. Should avoid doing. I think always be in touch with the user or the customer. You should avoid kind of building things in a vacuum. Release things early, get feedback, and iterate on them. Avoid doing things because they seem like the thing you need to do. So, you know how children play this game? I don't know if you play it. We used to play it, but kids play this game called like playing house, where you act like adults, and you do certain things like adults do, or what you think adults do. And I think a lot of startups end up playing house, where the founders look at like what Microsoft does or what Google does, and they try to do the same. They try to have the same organizational structure. They try to have the same meetings. They try to have the same goals or strategies. And that's kind of silly, because you don't have the same challenges as them. You're not operating the same scale as them. And so a lot of what you're doing end up being useless. So avoid that kind of stuff. It goes by many names, but I call it playing house. Some people call it cargo culting. So avoid that. Things I wished I knew before I started. I wished I knew more management and more sort of, how to sell and market and delegate and manage and inspire. I think a lot of what a startup is, beyond just building the technology, it's about inspiring people around you. It's about recruiting. It's about selling. It's about marketing. And so, if you're a programmer today and you know that you want to start a startup in the future, I would build more soft skills. If you're on the other hand, if you're like more a soft skills person, if you're sales, marketing, etc., I would learn programming. So it's you need both things.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So just sort of related to the last part that you said, what's one thing that you think that students that are listening should learn or experience if they would like to become a successful software engineer or computer programmer?
To become a successful computer programmer, I mean, it's sort of what everyone says, but it's true. Some cliches are cliches because it's true, which is, code a lot and program a lot and, spend, really have deep interests in what you're doing and continue learning about it and seek information, seek community. What you folks are doing here with the hackathons and with the communities you're building, you're absolutely on the right track. I think one thing my generation has not done well at, it's doing that. It's community, and it's programming used to be thought of as this solitary thing you do in solitude. But I think a more collaborative, more open, inclusive culture around programming will absolutely make it better. And so seek community, but also always be learning and always be programming and coding. And one of the reasons I built and designed Repl.it is to be able to code on the go, right? So be able to, like, I have an idea, I want to build this, like, I want to practice building this tree traversal algorithm in Python. And so, like, I'll go Repl.it, open a Python REPL and start like coding that. I can do it on my phone. I can do it anywhere. I'll continue improving, continue coding as fast as I can. And so that's at least what I've done, and it's served me well.
Okay, thank you. So just Nathan, I think you have a question, so I'll unmute you. And just one thing for the people who are just joining in, if you'd like to ask a question, then just do Alt-Y and raise your hand, or click participants and click the raise hand button. Nathan, can you,
Yeah.
are you able to? Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of us people in this hackathon are relatively young compared to, employees in tech companies. So I was wondering, as a CEO, what would you say to like a new hire or someone who's just entering the workforce, and like, how would you give them advice about it?
Yeah, actually, we do hire a lot of young people. We have young interns. You might know some of them, but we have now like 115, 117, 119. So we have teens in our company on the intern level, but also we've hired employees in the past when they were teens as well. Now they're older, but one of our first employee was actually 19 when we hired him. So I'm very familiar with working with teenagers. Honestly, I don't think you're at a disadvantage at all. I think maybe you have an advantage in a way, because I think the earlier you start, the more flexible you are, the more open to ideas you are, the more adaptable you are, even faster you are. I think one thing that happens as you get a little bit older is that you become wiser, but you become also slower in a way. So I think definitely I would encourage you to go out in the world and build things and and work at companies and intern and do as much as you can. Don't be discouraged by your age right now, and you can really you can start very, very early. With regards to what sort of advice I would give people your age, starting at tech companies, speak up. Speak up your mind. I think your experience and your ideas are valid. Don't get what they talk about, the imposter syndrome and all that. I think that's, a lot of people get it. I think you learn a lot more by sharing your ideas, even if people criticize them. You still learn a lot. So don't be embarrassed and speak up your mind.
Okay, so thank you. So we've got a question from David. So I'm going to unmute you. David, are you able to talk?
Hey, yeah, thank you. So I'm curious, when you're pursuing a project, when you're building something or building a company or building whatever it may be, whether project, company, or anything, what is the point where you hit an obstacle and you either decide it's not worth it or you should push forward? What is that point? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know it does make sense. It's a very good question, and I'm terrible at it because I've been working on the same thing, give or take, at different companies for a decade now, and maybe someone else would have given up. Um, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, what I really think, and it might not lead to the best outcomes, but what I really think, you gotta have conviction. Like everything today in this world, like everyone's just like jumping from one thing to another. I think it's actually much more profitable these days to have a conviction, have a solid idea that you really believe in, and go after it. Almost disregarding what potential obstacles you might hit, and just like go after it and try to do it. Um, yeah, you got to be open to feedback and criticism and things like that, but but at the same time you got to have conviction. So um to try to answer a more specific question is that if it is possible, just keep going after it. If it is impossible, then stop. If you go out and try to build something and do something and it turns out to be impossible for reasons of natural law or physics or human nature, whatever it is that you discover that it makes it impossible, then you should stop. But as long as it's possible, you should keep going.
Great. So we have one more question from Osama. Let me unmute you.
Thank you. Okay, so similar to the previous question, but what do you do in cases where you're emotionally drained or burned out, where you don't want to do the work anymore? You just feel like you're repeating the same thing over and over again. Sometimes you might like doubt yourself. What do you do in those situations that makes you stop doubting yourself and just keep going forward? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Read something inspirational. I like biographies, read biographies about like people who've done amazing things and hit obstacles themselves. I really like the Steve Jobs biography is pretty great, and a lot of those tech biographies are really awesome, and so reading, you're seeing what other people in history has. It doesn't have to be tech biographies. Like you can read about political figures. You can read about anyone who achieved something monumental, right? And in your mind, whatever you're running against will seem a little bit easier, maybe even trivial in some cases, because you read about people who've accomplished so much and had so much against them that they had to go they had to persevere, right? So that's one way I like to do. I think reading biographies is really a great way to motivate yourself. I think another one is activating the competitive side of your brain, is just saying that, I don't want to lose, I got to keep going. Even if I lose, I don't want to be ashamed of myself, that I didn't try my best. And so kind of having the self-talk around not losing, I think helps a lot. And maybe one last thing is like, step away and do something fun and do something interesting. Have hobbies. It's there's this, Silicon Valley mythos that, if you're a founder, if you're someone's working on something, you got to work hard, which is true. You got to work hard. But the idea that you don't have any hobbies or friends or whatever, that's kind of too much. So, have a hobby. I like powerlifting. I like going to the gym. So that's like one hobby I like to do. Even, when I'm like, don't want to think about work, I kind of focus on that and I try to do that. When I'm both physically and emotionally drained, that's tough, right? Because you can't do anything other than that. But maybe you read a book, you spend time with family, go out for a walk, meditate, do something like that. So you got to step away every once in a while from what you're doing and kind of reflect.
Great. So we have one more question from David. And if you guys have any last questions, please raise your hand now, because we are getting close to the end of this AMA. David, did you have a question? It seems like you just...
Yeah. Sorry, another question. I'm just going for it, brother. I'm with you with the powerlifting, though. I'm about it. With programming becoming more accessible for everybody, thanks to people like you, so thank you for that. How would you recommend standing out in an industry that could become more saturated in the future?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot of things are becoming software based, and with the crisis that we're going through right now, where people are locked down in their homes, a lot of things that used to not be software became software. And so I think just the reality of it is that there's actually more demand than there is supply right now. Like maybe in the future, there will be a lot more supply than there's demand with regards to software engineers and programmers. But right now it's the opposite. There are a lot of jobs that are not filled. So that's the kind of like, first brush at the answer. But like, maybe you still want to stand out, and you always want to stand out. You always want to do your best. I would say specialization is really important. I think one of the problem where it's kind of like a little bit saturated is with nothing against that, but like, quote unquote, like full stack engineer, right? So like, and we do hire them, and they're great. There are a lot of really great full stack engineers, nothing against them again, but there are a lot of people that are trying to learn everything, at a very, very shallow level and not really go deep. And the usual advice, which is you want to have more of a T-shaped experience, where you want to go deep, really deep on something and build expertise there, rather than kind of know everything at a very shallow level. There'll always be demand for those who go really deep on certain subjects, even if they're esoteric. I remember when I was at Facebook, working at Facebook in 2013, and when I first got in, I did a small stint on the photos team before I went to work on React. In the photos team, we had this like small program that was written in Flash that resized photos on the client, on your computer, before we send them to the cloud, to make compression easier, to make it smaller, so that we send it over to the wire. It doesn't cost a lot. And actually, no one at Facebook knew Flash. I don't know who wrote it, but when we were fixing some bugs in it, nobody knew how to do Flash. and Flash has been already dying. Um, and it was really hard to see anyone who knows Flash. And then we found a consultancy that does Flash, and they charge enormous amount of money because a lot of people moved, outside of Flash, and they remained the one with deep knowledge in Flash, and they still had a lot of opportunities and a lot of clients because there's a lot of legacy code written in Flash. Recently, I think there was the New Jersey government or something like that was looking for Fortran programmers. Like the last Fortran, educated programmers were like in the 70s and 80s. And the other reason I'm bringing these anecdotes is to say that deep knowledge in certain areas is actually worth a lot, and a lot more than people expect. So, a lot of especially front-end engineers are always trying to be, on the next hype train, on the next big thing. But what you end up being lost in the masses. Whereas if you go a little bit deep, your demand for your skill will always be there.
Thank you. So we've got one more question from Zane. I know we're going a little bit over time, so would it be okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm unmuting you now. Zane, can you talk?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Zane. I'm one of the mentors here at DefHacks. My question for you is, what do you think prepared you most for taking on a leadership role? Because I think it's one thing to build something that you're excited about, but it's a whole different beast to kind of lead a bunch of people and make large business decisions. So what do you think prepared you most to do that?
I think it's mostly activities outside of programming that really helped me with that. And I'll give you an example. In New York, when I was living in New York, so I'm from Jordan. I came to New York to work at a code academy, and one of the things that I noticed about myself is that I get really nervous when I speak in front of a crowd like this. I used to get really, really nervous, even small crowds. And I decided to do something I think quite the opposite of what people will do. Instead of running away from the fear, I actually try to face it. So I took improv and storytelling classes. And so I used to go to improv and kind of act dorky and and just try to deal with the anxiety of public perception and public speaking. And took some storytelling classes, and every day we had to go up in front of the class and tell a story. And it was so much fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I ended up my sort of anxiety around public speaking kind of subsided. And of course, public speaking is a very important leadership role, right? Especially you want to inspire people, you want to lead a team around you. You gotta be able to be articulate. You gotta talk to a bunch of people. And so that's one example of that. But kind of the general thing is that, again, what we talked about with regards to hobbies and things that you do outside of programming, you got to maintain a healthy set of things that you do in order to develop you into a person with well-rounded skills. So seek opportunities. I know there was, when I was looking at this, there was groups called Toastmaster, where you go develop your public speaking skills. There are groups, especially with meetup.com. Hopefully when things are safer, maybe they're doing it online right now, but like join groups like that where you could be able to develop your soft skills. And so that would be my biggest advice there.
That's great. I think it's also really great just because everyone here is kind of young. So I think it's something that really anyone can try and start doing to develop themselves. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, well, I think we are out of time. So thank you so much for coming here. We're all really grateful. I personally learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. Yeah, so just thank you so much.
Thank you, Shashank, and thanks everyone. And good luck with the rest of the hackathon. I don't know when it's done, but I look forward to seeing some of the results.
Yeah. And for everyone else, we thank you for joining this AMA. We've got 2 more AMAs tomorrow. So yeah, I'll be posting a link to those ones in the Slack chat soon. So thank you everyone
Bye.
for joining us. Bye.